Welcome, General Ecology class, to my Sunset Lake Microcosm project. My name is Scott O'Neill, and today is January 24th, 2021. The microcosm overview. The purpose of undertaking this assignment was to explore how living organisms could exist in a self-contained ecosystem environment while being manipulated by both biotic and abiotic factors. Blattler, 2019. During this assignment, the ability to grow a microcosm created in your own backyard and to observe and report the data obtained weekly within the project was fascinating. The project steered the individual mindset to an overall bigger picture and the protection of our environment. Microcosms can be utilized in ecology to create a miniature scale of a larger ecosystem in order to measure and take scientific data from those measurements and put the information to use in a grander scheme and scale. To relate to this presentation, the observer must understand that ecology is based on how different organisms can relate with their environment and with each other. There are numerous factors that dictate how successful or unsuccessful an ecosystem becomes. The hypothesis for this microcosm project is as follows. The ability for the microcosm to flourish and survive in an airtight container will not occur. The inability to off-gas and the inability for nutrients to enter the microcosm once sealed will all affect the outcome. Survival of all organisms will be futile. Methods and materials. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a pretty vivid photograph of the area that I took the samplings from. It's identified as Sunset Lake. That is in Portland, Texas. We live on the coast, as you can see, the water, which is part of the inlet to the Gulf of Mexico. So to build the version of the tidal pool microcosm project, the following steps and materials were utilized. I identified the area that had the least water, movement, but most vegetation and organisms. One 946 milliliter ball canning jar with a lid, approximately 945 milliliters of seawater / rainwater, since this is considered a brackish tidal pool, 10 centimeters of sand and or mud obtained from approximately 12 centimeters deep of an area bottom in one of the tidal pools. Barnacles were attached to black mangrove and oyster shells, black mangrove stalks and plants, floating moss, and miscellaneous greenery were included in the microcosm. So the microcosm project was active from December 7th, 2020 until January 21st, 2021. It took 4 weeks of indirect sunlight on a kitchen windowsill without an air gap or headspace and approximately 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It also took 2 weeks of direct sunlight outside with an air gap after I realized some mistakes in my project. At approximately temperature range outside lately has been between 62 and 79 degrees Fahrenheit. So the observations and data. So this photograph is 4 to 5 days after the initial building of the microcosm. The water became crystal clear after it was completely clouded due to the sediment upon the initial starting of this project. The water remained clear, but there was no movement observed at this time. Notice the missing headspace. I didn't leave any air in the jar, which was a mistake on my part. So the next photograph depicts week 2 of the microcosm project. A microscopic sized shrimp was observed buoyant in the water, but when the jar was moved, it sank to the bottom. Barnacles appeared to be living as well as the greenery on the mangroves. The water began to become hazy once again towards the end of the second week. During week 3, the greenery of the microcosm was wilting and dying. An extremely small worm was noticed on the sediment surface as well as what appeared to be the carcass of the shrimp. The barnacles appeared to be living at this time. However, the water appeared to be developing a slime coat, which may have been the cause of the shrimp mortality. Week 4 was full of surprises. As the greenery continued to decay, the shrimp carcass was accompanied by the now dead worm carcass At this time, I added an air gap in the jar by removing some of the water. The gaseous buildup inside the jar was almost more than I could stand. It polluted the house for a few hours, to say the least. Upon adding the headspace, the water began to clear. Notice the microcosm was removed to a more direct sunlight. In week 5, the water became crystal clear. What I believed to be algae blooms appeared on top of the water in the form of a foam. The occasional bubble from the sediment to the surface was present. Algae was growing on most of the surfaces within the microcosm. The barnacles appeared to be healthy, but it is unknown. The carcasses were still present. In week 6, it provided little to no excitement other than the floater at the water surface. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it had been living at some point in my project. Algae continued to bloom and cover everything, turning the water a light green. The barnacles appeared healthy, but other than that, they appeared to be no change. 3 days after the week 6 mark was the completion of the project. The project remained the same, and there were no visible changes to the enclosed environment. So the major findings, in order to understand the outcomes of the microcosm, one must look no further than the operator error, which is me. Had the headspace been added at the beginning of the project, it would have most likely have been more successful. So the Sunset Lake Microcosm Project lost life and gained life, much like a real ecosystem. The observations initially supported the hypothesis until changes were made mid-project. The identifiable organisms were present initially, but due to the project's inability to off-gas within a headspace, I believe that is what caused the mortality of both the shrimp and the worm, as well as the live plants within the system. Which did support the hypothesis. After adding the headspace and moving the project to direct sunlight, the water cleared, the new algae flourished, which did not support the hypothesis. Had the project not been tweaked, the original hypothesis would have been proven true. So 3 core concepts that were clear during the microcosm project were the following. Concept number 1, bottle big-scale studies are more similar than they seem. During the microcosm project, the fact that the same inclusions in the project are the exact pieces that represented the ecosystem would only lead to studies that replicate themselves, but only at a smaller scale. The data gleaned from the project can be used for various studies and thus holding similar value to larger areas of studies. Ives et al., 1996. Concept number 2, microcosm revolved around a community, whereas there were numerous organisms that interacted in the same habitat to make up the small ecosystem. Paris, 2016. The microcosm contained observable worms, shrimp, algae, plants, and mollusks, which created a small community within the microcosm project. Concept 3, global warming is conducive to plant and organism decay due to temperate and environmental changes. Batcher et al., 2016. Photosynthetic issues surrounding the enclosure, water temperature, high water, which led to gas not being able to escape, led to research involving a study that revolves around toxins being released into the environment from decaying matter and an ecosystem of which may have been the cause of the gaseous buildup prior to creating the headspace. Further research would include, if I had the proper measuring instruments, I would like to test the amount and types of gases that are exiting the system in order to further research into global warming. To improve this project, obviously the headspace would be left in order for a more productive project. Without the headspace present, the project seemed to have collapsed after approximately 4 weeks. While a small glimmer of hope appeared with the algae in the end, I would have personally liked to have seen the outcome after letting the microcosm run in its entirety with the headspace available for off-gassing. Microcosm in context. The microcosm is an integral part of ecology and the measurement of success or the collapse of an ecosystem. While the microcosm is a small space, the information gathered is similar to that of an entire ecosystem, utilizing both abiotic, which are non-living, and biotic, which are living factors. An ecosystem can be measured. The ability for different organisms to live together within a system and measuring the data available can assist researchers in protecting that ecosystem from possible global warming, assisting that ecosystem if an invasive species is located, or possibly something routine to just assist the overall health of the ecosystem for future generations to enjoy. References. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not a pro at PowerPoint, nor am I a pro at screencasting, but this was a very enjoyable assignment. Thank you all.